Welcome back to the 27. This is a setup analysis for the Sigma P1, an Imperial Endurance Brazil P2 class vehicle with an interesting story. We're going to be taking this car for a spin today to see if we can find any setup options you can try to increase lap times. The Sigma P1 is a product of a small independent engineering team based out of Brazil with a background in karting, believe it or not. The car was originally designed in 2015 and debuted in 2017 with limited success. Obviously a small budget team, they have been punching above their weight for several years now. It since has been relegated to the P2 category since then, as this category in Imperial Endurance Brazil Championship is sort of like a legacy category, because Sigma simply could not keep up with the cost and speed of the likes of the well-known AJR racers. But that doesn't mean the car hasn't had its share of upgrades. For the past several years, the Sigma team have been steadily improving the Sigma P1, mostly for durability purposes, as we all know how grueling endurance racing can be. But I wanted to note one interesting feature that would be relevant to us. It has its own unlimited DRS system. That's right, unlimited. If you would like to learn more about the Sigma P1, I'd like to direct you to a video by Donk. You can find the link to that video in the description below, but let's get back to the Sigma. How does it drive? Well, it drives like a prototype, but you can definitely tell it is a bit bare bones. For example, the interior vents on the dashboard are held together by duct tape. High performance duct tape though, probably. Maybe. It has everything you would want to tune a car, pretty much except for a modern 4-way damping package. In the Sigma's case, it only has a 3-way damping system, and only in the front where we can control some high-speed rebound, which does some work keeping the front aero stable. The default package is quite good, I must say, but different in philosophy from mine in several ways. Most players new to setups, the only change that they will make will be to the ARBs, which is fine as they do a ton of corner balancing work. However, sometimes instabilities can come across as ARB issues when they are in fact aero issues. And there is a point where softening the rear ARB will simply not work anymore or cause more problems. On a one-lap TT mode, that can generally be fine, but during racing conditions it will cause problems down the line. Identifying aero issues can be hard. Most often you'll hear the clack of the under tray, and that's easy enough, but for the most part, if you're fine on a nice flat turn, but the car has issues with the same type of turn but mixing in some bumps or track undulations, that's a big hint that's an aero issue caused by the suspension. For all cars, I like a stiffer spring set on the end of the car with the engine, and with aero cars I like a stiffer suspension overall. The reason being is with aero-dependent cars, aero consistency is key, and a stiffer suspension, springs, ARBs, and dampers are the keys to that consistency. They control the pitch and roll and other things. Here I felt that the Sigma was soft on the rear, drivable, sure, and I wanted to emphasize I am nitpicking here, so I stiffened the rear. With a stiffer rear suspension, it comes with a degree of instability, so the two things I did to mitigate that was to raise the front ride height, which increases aero understeer, and I swapped stiffness between the front springs and front ARB. I wanted a nice controlled trail braking, so I softened the front springs, but I also wanted it to be stiffer when progressively cornering, which helps the rear stay in check. Ultimately, I wanted a smooth corner entry and mid-corner, using the throttle to find the proper wheel slip angle. Consistency is key. I can't say that enough with race packages. You can control a car with your hair on fire for one lap in TT, but you want a stable, consistent package in racing conditions. Before we hit the telemetry, I wanted to note that setup work is an evolution. The myth is that one default can work fine on all tracks. It's simply not the case. Default setups, even mine, can be good on most tracks, but not all. Certain tracks have certain unique characteristics that must be taken into account. Fortunately, I test my cars on several tracks. For the Sigma P1 at Imola, my main test track, everything was fine. However, I tested Silverstone International for aero purposes, and some cracks with the default started to show. So let's dig into what I found. Hello to Racing Sim Tools, and as you can see, as I usually do, I register a lap session with the defaults and a lap session with the customs. These are both at Imola, the top two. The bottom two are at Silverstone International, where we will be referencing those laps as well, which I don't usually do. But the first thing I wanted to point out was the lateral stiffness distribution. This is the stiffness balance between the front and the back, and you can see that with the suspension changes that we made, we were able to basically improve the distribution between the front and the rear to be more balanced. I felt it was a little bit understeery, but note this as well, we increased the stiffness of the package altogether, but we actually wound up rolling just a little bit more. That's because of the ride height changes, especially in the front. So then let's move on to the dampers. Let's go back to Imola, where we're going to compare, let's see, suspension, dampers, there we go. Here we reduced the rebound on all the four corners. I've described this on several of my videos. These damper histograms are indicating to me that they have rebound bias, which means that they're stiffer on the rebound side, which is not unusual with a aero car, but you want to start off with a balanced package for the most part and then make changes later. It turns out to be, it wasn't that much of a big difference. I like to have a little bit of rebound on the fronts for aero purposes myself, so I just felt like the defaults did a little bit too far. Next thing, let's look at an interesting component. Let's look at the downforce. Downforce, here we go. So here is the default package in the yellow, the red and the blue, and then we're going to cross-reference that with the custom package with the green and the yellow, and you can see that we had a gain in rear aero, a rear downforce, but a loss in front downforce, which is because of the ride height fixes. But I felt like the aero balance was completely fine, so no harm, no foul there. The center of gravity, or the center of pressure, was improved to be about 60 or about 70%, which I think is right where it should be with the rear engine car. But let's move on to Silverstone International. Let's talk about something that I referenced before. Now, you can see I ran 3 laps here at Silverstone International. In the third lap, I spun. And that was over here by, I think it was like turn 4. If you've ever been to Silverstone International, there's that left-hander that's sort of like over, you're cresting a hill and going left to be at like a downhill section to go into the back straightaway. Well, here the back end wanted to step out on me and I lost control of it. It wanted to step out with the custom package, but it didn't. So let's look at why that thing is stepping out on us. So let's see, let's go to damper speeds. Let's focus in on the section of the track where that spin occurred, and you can see that there was a lot of rear damper speed here. These up and down yellow indicate a lot of rear suspension velocity. So typically, let's focus in even more. I know it's garbled, but these oscillations, they should end at a certain point. But this one, it seemed to go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It just didn't want to stop. So let's cross-reference that with the custom package, and you can see that it went up and down, but then it kind of critical damped right around here. So I was able to maintain more control over the car. Let's cross-reference it again. Up, down, up, down, up, down with the pink here, up at the top, pink, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then lost control. So looking at the aero package, the ride height concerns, it's the same, it'll reflect the same thing. So here you're looking at the axle load on the, let's go to ride height, not downforce, ride height. You can see here is the second bar is the rear, the blue, and you can see it just goes up and down, up and down, up and down until control is lost. With the custom package, it was up and down once and then critically dampened the rest of the way. That made the car survive that corner, which in a multiplayer context is going to be really, really important. At this point, at this stage of the test, I was on lap 3 where the tires are losing grip because of heat, and you don't want any of these uncritically dampened effects to come into play, which will ruin your race. Now, the thing that's interesting to observe is I didn't come across these issues with the Imola test at all. So it's important that setups are an evolution. You always should be tinkering with cars. Anytime you're in practice mode or preparing for a race or in quali and you find something strange, don't be afraid to experiment, and it'll improve the car, and then moving forward you can just fine tune it, even on a per track basis. So that's the Sigma P1. In the hands of someone who hasn't watched this video, they will probably be fine. But since you've stuck around to watch the video and even the telemetry, right? You know what to look out for. The car will give you most everything by default that the custom package will, until it doesn't. And in the multiplayer context or league context, finishing races is the most important thing. Coming up, a car that I've been waiting to work on for several months. You read my mind. It's the M1 Pro car. You're right. That's weird. Until next time, thanks for watching and take care.